A short history of Switzerland. Switzerland is a small country, 41,285 square kilometers equals 15,940 square miles, but densely populated, 7 million inhabitants, 170 per square kilometer equals 440 per sq.mi, situated in the heart of Western Europe. It shares much of its history and of its culture with its neighbours Germany, Austria, Italy, and France. Some 60% of Switzerland are in the Alpine region, with high mountains, 12 peaks above 4,000 meters equals 13,000 feet above sea level and many more between 2,000 and 4,000 meters, and narrow valleys. 30% are hills and relatively flat valleys carved out by glaciers called Midlands, 400 to 900 meters above sea level. 10% on a chain of older mountains called Jura, not exceeding 1,600 meters above sea level. Most of the cities, towns and larger villages are located in Mittelland. This means that the actual density of population in this part of the country is somewhere near 500 inhabitants per square kilometer, 1,300 per square mile. About 600,000 years ago, temperatures sank and Europe was covered by glaciers almost completely. In Lucerne, central Switzerland, the thickness of the ice reached as much as about 1 kilometer, 3,000 feet. Until about 30,000 years ago, several cold and warm periods followed. Animals and men came to Europe and had to leave again. The focus of cultural development remained for thousands of years in the Middle East, Sumer, Babylon, Egypt, however. Traces of early hunters, weapons and tools made from stone splinters, bones of prey animals, can be found in several natural caves in Switzerland. Later, around 3000 BC lake dwellers erected their houses made of wood and clay on posts at the shores of Switzerland's lakes. Metals, first copper, then bronze, an alloy of copper and tin, were introduced in Europe around 2000 BC. Bronze Age tools and weapons were first just copies of the most advanced late Stone Age products. Iron was known in the Middle East as early as around 3000 BC but came to Europe relatively late. The early Iron Age period in Europe, 800 to 450 BC, is named after Hallstatt, a village in Austria. Celtic tribes colonized Europe from the east. Around 500 BC they had reached Switzerland and eastern France. Their culture is known as the Latin period, 450 to 1950 BC, of the Iron Age. This name comes from an excavation in western Switzerland, Lake of Neuchâtel. At this time, Switzerland's relatively flat midlands from Lake Geneva to Zurich were the territory of a Celtic tribe named Helvetians. The name of the Helvetians lives on as a keyword for everything that needs a short name not depending on one of the 4 official languages spoken in different parts of Switzerland. The label Helvetia can be found on coins and postal stamps. While the Swiss top-level internet domain .ch stands for Confederatio Helvetica, the Latin version of Swiss Confederation. When the Helvetians attempted to move south to southern France they were stopped by the Roman commander and subsequent emperor C. Julius Caesar in 58 BC. They were forced to return to Switzerland. The Romans controlled Switzerland's territory until about AD 400. Roman military camps and forts were erected at the northern Rhine frontier towards Germany. Several major Swiss cities and towns were founded by the Romans, among others Basel, Zurich, Geneva, Lausanne, and Chur. A widely accepted theory assumes that most European peoples have a common origin somewhere in Central Asia. Their languages, Greek, Latin, Old German, Old English, Slavonian, are quite similar to each other and even to Persian, Iran, and Sanskrit, India. For reasons we do not know, they decided to move to the regions of the world where they settle now. While southern Europeans arrived in Greece and Italy several thousand years BC. Germanic tribes first moved to the north, Poland, Scandinavia, and from there to the west and south, France, Great Britain, Germany. Slavonians came last. Smaller incidents between Roman troops and Germanic tribes did not change a balance of power for several centuries until about AD 400. But then the Roman Empire was challenged by severe attacks and raids carried forth to the south of the Alps. So the Romans withdrew troops from their territories north of the Alps, including Switzerland. But they could not prevent the decline of their empire. The Western Germanic tribe of the Franks invaded France, and settled near Paris. They adopted much of the Roman culture and even their language Latin, which was gradually transformed into what is known today as French. Much the same was true for the Burgundians settling along the Jura mountain chain in France, Burgundy, and western, French-speaking, Switzerland. The southern Germanic tribe called Alemanni settled in southern Germany and northern Switzerland. Recent excavations in Switzerland do not support the older theory of a violent conquest. It seems much more probable that the Alemanni were not quite interested in Roman towns, nor Roman culture. They rather infiltrated in small groups, cleared woodland and erected their own small villages. They stuck to their German language as did the northern Germanic tribes settling in northern Germany and Scandinavia. Today's border between German and French language in Switzerland is more or less the border between Burgundians and Alemanni. While the original Celtic population kept up at least parts of their culture in some parts of France, Spain, Ireland, and Great Britain, the original Celtic population in Switzerland completely melted with the newcomers in the course of the centuries. So there is no area with special Celtic influence nor any significant remains of their language in Switzerland except for a few geographical names. In the Middle Ages a feudal system was developed in Europe. The king was primarily a warlord and had power to distribute land conquered by his troops among the dukes. These gave it to the knights. Money barely existed. There was no economical ground to raise taxes in significant amounts. As both German and Celtic tribes had little experience in writing, science and arts, Europe took several centuries to regain the knowledge of the Greek and Roman culture. This work was performed by literate monks in the monasteries. Interestingly enough, the task of preaching the gospel to Germanic people in Switzerland was not taken over by Romans or people from Constantinople, but rather by wandering Irish monks. One of them, Gallus, settled near St. Gallen, eastern Switzerland, early in the 7th century. AD 820 an influential monastery was founded there. Monasteries were also leading in agricultural progress, for example fruit growing, and business affairs, for example model business treaties from St. Gallen AD 888. From the 11th to the 13th centuries, many cities, among them the federal capital Bern, Lucerne, Freiburg, were founded. Skilled craftsmen specialized in production of high-quality goods and trade became more important. So did the roads crossing the Alps. At the same time, people from the upper part of Canton Wallis developed means to suspend wooden water pipes and catwalks and steep rocks. People from Wallis settled in Upper Uri and Graubünden, Grisons, around AD 1200. So the Skolinen Canyon in Uri, that had blocked the way to St. Gotthard Pass, was overcome and a trade route developed. The new route made those regions far from the centers of power look interesting for the Counts of Habsburg who were trying at the time to strengthen their dynastic power. German King Friedrich II exempted Uri, 1231, and Schwyz, 1240. From the powers of counts and made them subjects to the king alone as a reward for help in several war expeditions to Italy. When King Rudolf of Habsburg, the first German emperor from this house, died in 1291, people from Muri, Schwyz and Unterwalden feared that the Counts of Habsburg would try to regain influence in their territories. So they swore to help each other against anyone trying to subject them. This is the background of the legend of William Tell, the Swiss national hero. The Counts of Habsburg tried to reach their goals by military force but were defeated several times and finally had to leave their native castle in Switzerland, while they were strong enough at the same time to gain the German kingdom from their new seat in Austria. Corruption had deprived the Roman Catholic Church from its credibility during the last centuries of the Middle Ages. Numerous attempts of reforms within the system, for example orders of mendicant friars, councils, had not produced long-term results. When Renaissance scholars discovered ancient handwritings of the Bible in the original Greek, instead of the Latin, language and began to study them as well as early comments by Bishop Augustine, AD 354–430, they found a new approach to the Christian religion, sola scriptura, only the Bible instead of church tradition, and sola fide, only faith instead of religious exercises. What Martin Luther preached in Germany, Huldrych Zwingli taught in Zurich, and even more radical. John Calvin organized the Reformed Church in Geneva, Ecolampad and Basel. The Reformation in Switzerland split the country into fractions, the progressive cities like Zurich, Basel, Bern, Neuchâtel, Geneva turned to the new confession. Whereas the conservative, rural areas in central Switzerland, including Lucerne, remained Catholic. When the Pope started an inner reform to regain influence, Lucerne gladly accepted the opportunity and called in the Jesuit order to organize its schools. Science, economy, philosophy and arts had all set out for new shores. Only the political system remained as it was. Or to be more precise, medieval feudalism culminated in absolutistic forms of kingdom, especially in France and Austria. Political philosophy, especially in France, reacted with new ideas on society and political organization. Among those was Jean-Jacques Rousseau, born in Geneva, living most of his life in France. For centuries, young Swiss men, especially from central Switzerland, fought in mercenary troops for French kings and Italian dukes. During the French Revolution, a detachment of 800 Swiss mercenaries tried to defend the king against the radical Montagnards assaulting the Tuileries Castle in 1792. All mercenaries were killed. The Lion Monument in Lucerne reminds of the infamous end of the once formidable Swiss military force. Inspired by the French Revolution, liberal people in western Switzerland revolted against the undemocratic reign of the old members of the Swiss Confederacy over other parts of the country and called for French support in 1798. Napoleon Bonaparte's troops occupied Switzerland and a central government was introduced. But soon, 1803, he was obliged to re-establish some federal elements. After Napoleon was defeated in Russia and at Waterloo, Switzerland returned to extremely federal structures in 1815. However, the cantons, federal states, St. Gallen, Graubünden, Arga, Thurgau, Ticino, Vaud, Valais, Neuchâtel and Geneva became full and free members of the Confederation instead of their former status of partial members or even subject territories. From 1815 to 1848 liberals and conservatives debated about the structure of Switzerland after the French Revolution. Step by step the liberals could put through small innovations on the cantonal level. There were liberals as well as conservatives in every canton. The majority of one or the other side was mostly quite small, so that government changed from time to time in many cantons. When the cantons with conservative governments made a secret treaty with Austria against the liberals in 1846, civil war, Sonderbundskrieg, was inevitable. Thanks to Henri IV, general of the liberal troops, it lasted only a few days and cost only 86 dead and some 500 wounded soldiers. After this, the way was free for a new political system, the loose confederacy. Almost without common structures was replaced by a confederation of 25 with enforced central structures after the model of the United States of America. After World War II, technical progress and economic growth reached a new dimension particularly in Western Europe, North America, and Southeast Asia. Switzerland, with its tradition in machine building, chemical and pharmaceutical processes and financial services, could establish itself as an important player on global markets. Political stability is based on a broad coalition of four parties: Liberals, Conservatives, Social Democrats and People's Party, farmers/craftsmen, improved government programs for social security and a negotiated partnership between employers and trade unions helped to increase both productivity and prosperity for all inhabitants. Switzerland, though not member, takes part in many scientific programs of the European Union. Among others, it hosts the European Nuclear Research Centre, Centre Européen de Recherche Nucléaire, CERN, where the Internet was born, when Tim Berners-Lee in 1989 designed hypertext markup language, HTML, as a simple and effective means to link text and graphics independent of proprietary standards. Society has changed following the 1968 students' protest movement in Europe. Religious and moral traditions have become less important to people. On the other hand, problems are discussed more frankly. The Swiss Stop AIDS campaign, a cooperation between a self-help association and the Federal Office for Health, is an excellent example of this new spirit.